Well, I will start with bahasa first. Is it okay, Catherine?
That's fine, of course.
But I will talk to the audience first, and then I will continue with English. Baik, para peserta, terima kasih sudah berpartisipasi dalam kuliah tamu yang diadakan oleh jurusan Ilmu Komunikasi FISIP Unila. Pada pertemuan pagi hari ini kita akan mendapat kehormatan untuk berdiskusi dengan salah seorang digital research analyst yang sekaligus juga profesional di bidang ilmu informasi di Australia, dan beliau ya saat ini juga sebagai manajer akses untuk superkomputer di Australia, kemudian program dari asistensi peneliti di Australia. Bagi mahasiswa yang mengikuti kelas TIK, saya akan mengingatkan kembali bahwa poin pertemuan kali ini akan mempunyai nilai buat nilai akhir Anda. Penugasannya sudah saya upload di Siakadu, nanti hasilnya juga bisa di-upload melalui Siakadu. Pada pagi hari ini kita akan memulai kegiatan ini sambil menunggu peserta yang lainnya. Tapi sebelum itu, untuk memulai acara kita pada pagi hari ini, marilah sama-sama kita melafalkan lafal basmalah. Bismillah. Saya Ahmad Riza Faizal akan memandu Anda dalam pertemuan ini, pengantar dari Ibu Ketua Jurusan Ilmu Komunikasi FISIP Unila, Ibu Wulan Suciska, lalu pemaparan oleh guest speaker kita, Dr. Catherine Howard, lalu sesi kedua dan sesi ketiga adalah tanya jawab. Saya harapkan banyak partisipasi. Anda bisa bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Nanti akan saya teruskan. Inggris. Bagi mahasiswa juga ada poin lebih untuk yang bersesi dalam sesi. Oke. Kita akan we will begin the first session. First, there will be introduction by the head of department, Ms. Wulan Suciska. Ms. Wulan, is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Riza. Hello, Catherine, once again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Tabi pun.
Ya pun.
Catherine, just for information for you, Tabi pun is a greeting from the Lampung language, which means permission to speak. And the listener were ya pun, which means allowed to talk. May I repeat again and you can follow. Tabi pun.
Ya pun.
Lampung now. Hello students, welcome to the Department of Communication Studies Lampung University series of international guest lectures. And also welcome to Dr. Catherine Howard, our distinguished guest lecturer. Today we are going to talk about the medium. The media itself cannot exist without the medium. In communication studies, we study about how humans media to interact with the world and among itself. Therefore, discussion about the role of the medium is as important as the discussion about the media. We are all familiar with the term medium is the message. The jargon means that it was the medium itself that shaped and controlled the scale and form of human association and action. Marcel McLuhan, the person who coined the idiom, talked about medium as a medium of communication in the broadest sense in his book, Understanding Media. He wrote, the instant of the electric light may prove illumination in this connection. The electric light is pure information. It's a medium without a message, as it were, unless it's used to spell out some verbal at or name. The light bulb is a clear demonstration of the concept of the medium is the message. A light bulb doesn't have content in the way that a newspaper has an article or a television has a programs, yet it is a medium that has a social effect. There's a light bulb enables people to create space during nighttime that would otherwise be involved by darkness. So, Miss Catherine, if I may, I hope you will be our light bulb today and light us with your experience, of course. For students, our distinguished lecture will talk about the RADAR program. RADAR stands for, correctly if I'm wrong, Miss Catherine, the Research Assistance and Development for Australian Researchers.
Yes.
For what it do and how it relevant with the use of the medium of collaboration. We will find it in the following discussion. I think that's all I can say for the starter. I hope we all can have a good discussion today. And Ms. Catherine, again, thank you for your time and attention, for giving our student a broader horizon about the world. And in this moment, about the role of the media in RADAR program, of course. So let's enjoy the discussion, everyone. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Lovely.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Ms. Ulan. Before our guest speaker start her presentation, I will read her resume. Name, Dr. Catherine Howard. The occupation right at the moment is digital research analyst at Intersect Australia. Is also a digital research analyst in University of South Australia. Her education starts Master of Art, MA in Digital Libraries. And then she holds a certificate of tertiary teaching from RMIT University. And she did her PhD dissertation about educating cultural heritage information professional, galleries, libraries, archives. She's also a manager at Journal of Teaching and Learning for Graduate Employability at Deakin University in Melbourne. And before that, she was a research fellow at Center for Design Innovation at Swinburne University of Technology, and then library project lead, research data management at Flinders University. And then she was a lecturer at information management program at RMIT University at Melbourne. And she had very much quite comprehensive publication. There's a lot of journals and industry report and presentation from the international conference. She received several awards, Erasmus Mundus Scholarship for master degree, and then Walter de Grey Stiftung Foundation. And then she also received Australian Postgraduate Award, APA, and Eugene Jarfield Doctoral Dissertation Fellowship Award. And that's, I think, quite achievements. Okay, Catherine, in front of you is students from Department of Communication, as well as another student from another department. There are also a lot of lecturers also join us today in the session. And I will give you about 15 to 20 minutes for to do the presentation. Is it okay? But you're also very free if you think that's the time is not enough. So Catherine, time is yours.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Bu Wulan and Pak Riza. It is my absolute pleasure to be here. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see my slides. Okay, I'll just...
Yes, we receive it. Yes, can see
Lovely.
clearly.
Good. So Namani, that is hello in Ghana language, which is the country that I am on at the moment. Let me just, yeah. So I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am today, the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. Namani.
Okay, Namani.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat
Selamat
Terima
pagi.
kasih telah
Selamat
mengundang
pagi.
saya. I hope that was okay. I've been practicing all morning and it's really hard. So thank you for such a lovely introduction, and I'm really, really pleased and very happy to be here and talking to you all today. You may know the shape of Australia. You probably do. You probably don't know where Adelaide is, though. We're right down the bottom. Adelaide is the capital city of Adelaide. Sydney is our biggest city in the country, but Canberra is our capital. So a lot of people think that Sydney is our capital. It's not. Canberra is our capital. That is a picture of my hometown, of my city. So it's lovely and green. It's not very big as far as cities go, but it's nice. We don't have much of a rush hour with traffic, which is lovely. So Pak Riza asked me to say a little bit about my job, the role that I have at the moment. The company that I work for is called Intersect. They are based in Sydney, but they have an office in Melbourne and Adelaide. And they are a not-for-profit digital research organisation. That means that they develop digital products to help researchers. One thing that they're developing at the moment is some digital material around research data management, because when we do research and we create lots of digital, we collect lots of digital data, we need to be able to access that data in the future. So Intersect, that is one project that they're working on. The other side of the business is their service delivery, and that's where I come in. I'm a digital research analyst. I have colleagues in universities throughout Australia who have the same role as me. Universities decide that they want to be a member of Intersect. They pay a fee, and for that fee, they get 15 days of training and the services of a dedicated digital research analyst at that university. I am the digital research analyst for the University of South Australia. We have another digital research analyst at the University of Adelaide in the same city. We have a digital research analyst at the University of Canberra, one in the La Trobe University in Melbourne, Deakin University, University of New South Wales, University of Technology, Sydney. So we have, and that's not all of them, but we have a number of colleagues. I help researchers with anything digital. So if their research involves collecting data with software like Qualtrics or RedCap, which is another data collection software, if they don't know how to use that, I can show them how to use it. I can show them how to use software for data analysis like NVivo or SPSS, which is a statistics package. And I've already mentioned about research data management. We need to have good research data management practices so that we can access our research data in the future. So you know that even maybe a few years ago, if you created a Word document and you've now updated your computer, you might not be able to open that Word document any longer on your new computer. That's what research data management is all about. The data that we collect today may not be able to be opened in maybe even 2 years' time. So we need to make sure that we take care of it, we look after it, and that we upgrade it and update it to latest data formats. So my role is to provide training and advice to researchers on the best technology solutions to help productivity. So what do I mean by technology solutions? Well, I've mentioned some of them already. Qualtrics, NVivo, SPSS, for example. But also at the University of South Australia, I look after the high performance computer, or HPC, and cloud computing. So if researchers need a lot of compute power, certainly something more than what their desktop computer can give them, a cloud computing solution might be the best for them, and Intersect offers those solutions as well. If they need even more power than that, they can use our national high performance computer called Gardi, which is another Aboriginal language word. And that is a national computer where everybody across the country in research institutions are allowed access to that. So I facilitate that access to for the students and staff at the University of South Australia. So what is digital research? Basically anything that uses, it's research that uses digital tools to conduct that research. So collecting the data, it might even involve things like web scraping. I'm involved in a project at the moment where a researcher is scraping Twitter, and they are then analysing that data using R, the programming language R. We also teach, we at Intersect teach Python languages. We teach Linux and all sorts of things. I can leave you with the link to our course catalogue so that you can have a look and see some of the courses that we teach. So about the RADAR program, as Buwalan said, it is research assistance and development for Australian researchers. It was a small project that ran for approximately 12 months within a larger project that ran for about 3 years. It was a research collaboration between librarians and library academics, so Library and Information Science, or LIS academics. There were 3 teams or 3 research projects that were run, and they were all supported by 2 senior researchers who happened to be professors. The teams were located in the same city, so there was one research team in Melbourne, there was one in Sydney, and there was one in Brisbane. The whole aim of the project was to increase the amount of research that Library and Information Science has that comes from a practice background. In Library and Information Science in general, there are a lot of criticisms that the research that we do and that the research body of work that we have is from academics who have never worked in a library in their life. There's other criticisms from academics saying that the research that the librarians do is not very rigorous because they're not trained in research methods and how to do research. So the obvious thing, let's collaborate. The researchers can learn about practice contexts and about working in a library and some of the problems that the librarians face. And then the librarians can then also learn about the research and how to conduct proper research using good methods and good methodologies. It's to encourage the collaboration between librarians and academics. In addition to those research projects, there were interviews. conducted by the two professors. So it was like a research project within a research project. So the librarians and academics were doing their research project. The professors then asked them about their experience, about their collaboration experience. And some of those reflections are what I'll talk about in just a moment. The communication tools that they used, because the three research teams and the two professors, they were all located in different areas. So they met 9 times in a virtual environment. They used Zoom or Microsoft Teams, just as we're doing today. But all of this was done before COVID. So we weren't so used to using these systems. And it was a bit novel and quite unique at the time, really, to be using these systems. Other media that the participants used was that they used a blog to write about their projects and their other reflections. They also participated in a series of webinars. So the teams would talk about how their projects were going, or another part of research, and offer their reflections, sometimes in response to a question that the professors would give them, and then they would have a webinar in which anyone from around Australia could attend in a very similar environment to this, again, using Microsoft Teams or using Zoom or other media such as this. So it was quite novel at the time. We think of these Zoom meetings now as commonplace. I'm not sure how the situation is in Indonesia, but I very much use Zoom almost on a daily basis for my work. I have, as I said, my company, Intersect, is based in Sydney. So my boss actually works in Sydney, which is just over a 2-hour flight away from Adelaide. And other tools that I use are things, we have a Slack channel, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's very much like Messenger, email, things like that. So we use those tools every day. So we have to be confident and comfortable talking to people in a face-to-face manner, even though we may not be face-to-face, such as using Zoom. We need to be comfortable using written communication as well, and whether that be in a formal way, using emails tend to be more formal. Using the Slack channel to ask your colleague a question is just really like asking your colleague who used to sit next to you in an office, how do you do this? Instead now, we write all of that. So we have lots of tools now. We have lots of different mediums in which to use to communicate with people. So the interviews, as I mentioned, were done by the professors to the research teams, and they were interviewed individually. So some of those findings I'll talk a little bit about now. The respondents agreed that practice-informed research was positive, and it was a positive way to bring librarians and academics together, which was the aim of the process. So even though this was based, the context of this research was done in a library and information science, it certainly applies to a lot of different practice-based professions, actually. So things like psychology is very much a practice-based profession where we have a lot of academics working in universities. We have practitioners practicing psychology, and often they don't talk to one another. Even teaching, we have people who teach people how to be teachers. At primary schools, at high schools. But often those people don't talk to the people who are actually teaching the children in the classrooms. So when I say a practice-based profession, it's something that's, it's a profession that is that is practicing what it is that they were taught at the university. So the aim of the project, as I said, was to bring practitioners, librarians and library academics together, and it was successful in doing that. The librarians said that they were exposed to different topics of professional conversation by having academics to talk to, and that it was beneficial for them to know what it was that academics were thinking and how academics thought about library practice. It was also beneficial for the academics to see library practice from the view and from the lens of a librarian. So even though a lot of library academics are trained librarians and have in fact worked in libraries, I'm one of them. I have worked in a library. I have been a library academic. Not everybody has in a library now as a librarian has that background. Not every librarian has done research, particularly in Australia, and not every librarian, especially in Australia, knows about research methods and what it is and what it means to conduct research in a proper academic way. The joint meetings that they had over Zoom with the professors were very beneficial for everyone to hear about different views of research. So whilst it was an opportunity for each research group to talk about their project specifically, it then gave other people the opportunity to say things like, well, have you thought about doing it this way? And offering different insights and different perspectives. It's often difficult to learn and to grow as professionals if we don't understand other people's viewpoints, and particularly in an area like librarianship and what we call in Australia public librarianship, where anybody and everybody can use the public library. We have a very multicultural country here in Australia. So we have people from very different language backgrounds, very different cultural backgrounds, particularly from myself, for example, who has a white Australian and a European background. I speak one language. We have many people who use our libraries who have at least two languages, and usually English is the second one. So they may not be very comfortable talking in English to the librarians. They may not be comfortable reading a great deal in English. They may want just general information in their own language. So librarians help to provide them with that, or at least link them to that information. One really important thing that came out was that when we think of collaboration, we think that a collaborative project is one where everybody agrees and everybody is involved in any decision making. But in practice, that's actually quite different. And sometimes you just have to make decisions are needed to be made in a very short time frame. So in practice, sometimes that's just left up to one person. So the teams realize that collaboration doesn't actually mean, it doesn't have to mean that everything is done together, that every task and that every decision-making opportunity has to be done together and in consultation with each other. It can be done individually, and it can be done as a group, or a combination of both, which is what they found. So thinking that collaboration means everyone always agrees and everyone always knows everything that's going on doesn't always fit. That in practice, a collaborative project doesn't have to mean that everybody is always in agreement. Now, I've put a star by the first point there, that respondents agreed that practice-informed research is a positive way to bring librarians and academics together. They absolutely agreed to that, but there were some conditions almost, and that is that the practitioners, especially the librarians, needed organisational support to help to make this happen. So organizational support is things like your boss agreeing that what you are doing, that research is in fact important to our profession, to the library profession, and that you need time to do research. And it's not just time to write the survey or the questionnaire. It's not just time to send out the questionnaire, or it's not just time to go and interview people. It's then more actually time to think about your results, to analyze your results, to think about the implications of those results. What are people telling you that they want? Sometimes it can be very, very simple. And I want a program for my children in that is conducted in Bahasa, for example. It might be people saying that they want, I don't know, they want to learn how to use the library computers and how to learn the library. Sometimes people say things very specific, and that's very, very easy then to say, well, everybody or lots of people say that they want this service from a library, so you can go and implement that service. Other times people are not as specific as that, and you sometimes need to think about what it is that they're actually asking you. So you need time to not only do the research, but time to think about the research. And time to think about people's responses and what it is that they are asking or that they want you to do. You need time as a librarian to build your skills and knowledge as a researcher. As I said, in Australia, we do not teach our librarians anything about research methods. So our librarians go out and into the world of librarianship, but they don't actually know anything about researching within their own profession. And that's where you get the divide between the academics who are taught how to do research and the practitioners, hence the collaborative opportunity that this project provided them. We also need time and recognition, rather, from our organisation, from our library managers, that research is an important part of the librarian's role. So in library and information science, we do not have a lot of information, a lot of research that is practice-based, that is a result of research being done within that practice context. A lot of the research, as I said before, is just done from the researchers, from the academics at the university. It doesn't take into consideration practice environments. And if we are a practice-based profession, in order to be a profession, we need to have a body of research that we can refer to that informs our practice. So practice informs research, research informs practice. It's a two-way street. So we need our library managers and our bosses to understand that research is a very important part of the librarian's role. I believe Pak Riza sent an article that I wrote with the two professors, as it turns out. I believe he sent that to you beforehand. So if you would like to read that, if you have any questions, you are certainly free to either ask them here or you can send them to me over email. I'm happy to receive emails as well, but we can continue this chat later on. But that's pretty much what I wanted to say today about the project. That's one of our furry friends here that we have in Australia and in Adelaide. They're one of my favourite Australian marsupials. That's our koala. And they're not, we call them koala bears, but they're not actually a member of the bear family. They are just koalas. So they are cute and fluffy, and I love them. So terima kasih. I hope I've said that right again. And I'm really happy to answer any questions now that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Catherine, for that wonderful presentation. And Actually, I haven't distributed the journal to all of the participants, but just for some students and lecturers. But anyone who also interested with the article can send me the notification. I will send it to our host. And from what I can write at the moment about the presentation, that the tools has become the middleman in terms of they facilitate the students also from the professor and the expert to teach or to share their experience in the research. And that's actually a very good networking. And I think in Indonesia, we can also learn about how the research student network. And for the participants, I will open 2 sessions of question and answer. For the first session, I will ask for 3 participants. Is there anyone want to deliver any question? State your name. Ada? Apa saya akan buka sesi tanya jawab? Ada 2 sesi nanti. Untuk sesi pertama kita akan buka untuk 3 penanya. Anda bisa pakai emoticon raise your hand ya, bisa untuk tanya. Nanti host akan ada? Ada? Tolong host bisa dipin siapa? Silakan langsung saja sebut nama.
First of all, my name is Alpha Inax Alpha. I want to ask to Miss Catherine, is there any problem that did you face when you do research in collaboration with other people?
Digital.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There can always be problems. And particularly in a Western culture, we don't have the same politeness that perhaps you may have in Indonesia and in other countries. That's not to say that we're nasty people by any stretch, but we often say what we think. And depending if you don't agree with those sentiments, people there can be conflict there. So the conflict can often be between people, not so much between the tools. So the tools that we use, while some do have limitations, for example, one of the professors, I won't say which one, but one of the professors, and I'll admit, I don't like Microsoft Teams. I much prefer to use Zoom, for example. So if someone starts a Microsoft Teams meeting, we much prefer to have it over Zoom, because we find Zoom is a lot easier, a lot more intuitive to use. So sometimes the tools do get in the way, but more often any difficulties, I would say, come more from people and the people's personalities.
Okay, so it's very depend to their character rather than the tools.
Yes.
Okay. Very good questions. And the second one is,
May I, sir?
yes, please.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Mutia Putri Maharani Karim. And excuse me, miss, could you please share your tips and tricks to see the problem on your environment with different perspectives so you can do the research for back impact? Thank you.
So, sorry, you broke up a little bit there. So the different environments, I caught that bit.
To see the problem on your environment with different perspectives. So you can do the
Sorry, it's breaking up a little bit.
think how to collaborate, how to mix or collaborate the different perspective. Can you share any tips or tricks in your experience, how the researchers putting themselves in other shoes, I think.
Okay. Again, I think that comes down to individuals and how willing you are to listen to the other side. I think listening is, we have a saying in English, and I don't know if you have anything similar. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen twice as much as we speak. And we don't. We often speak more than we listen. So we should learn to listen to other people.
Totally.
We should try to understand their perspective and why they might hold a certain opinion about something. And we should question that opinion in a respectful manner. That will largely depend on the person. Some people do not want to be questioned. Some people do not want to be respectful, unfortunately. And that's actually probably a better word than what I used in my previous response, that our culture isn't, it's not that we're not respectful, but we are respectful in a different way and perhaps on a different level to your culture, for example. So yes, I think very much willing to listen twice as much as you speak.
Okay. So is there any chance that the concept of trust is also involved in the use of the tools? I mean, does the tools more elaborate the trust? Or?
No, I don't think they do. I think that the tools are exactly that. They're a tool. They help you to communicate when you might not be in the same city. I'm not in the same city now. We are still collaborating. I don't think I would approach this any differently if I was standing in front of you. So the tool has just enabled me, has allowed me to talk to you. I don't think it does help with helping with trust or anything like that. We need to remember too, tools are an enabler. They can't take the place of being respectful, listening to people and speaking less. It's the tool just helps us to overcome time barriers and space barriers.
Okay, Bintang Aulia, silakan.
Okay, hello, Miss Dr. Catherine Howard. My name is Bintang, and what I want to ask is there any specific thing that you find when you do the research collaboration in Australia, in Radar in Australia, that you wish it can be happen, that you're proud of and you wish can be happen in other research moment or in other place when they did the research collaboration? Is there any specific thing?
I wish more of our librarians, and I say that from a library background, it could apply, as I said before, to any practice profession, but I wish our librarians were more interested in conducting research. we do have a lot of librarians, unfortunately, who don't see the need for what I would call proper research. And when I say proper research, I mean, having been trained as a researcher, I have undertaken research methods training. So I know what it is to do research from an academic perspective. Unfortunately, many of our library practitioners do not understand that, and they don't see a need for it. I think that comes back to our education for librarians. If they were taught research methods in library school and the reasons why they are being taught research methods in library school, I think that would make a big difference.
Okay, so people who use the or as benefactor to the RADA program, is there any requirement they ask you to provide from the participant in the program, or is there any set of standard?
No,
we involve the program?
No, the program was created before I started working on the project. It was a merit-based, so there was a small fee involved. So the project did receive some funding, only a very small amount though, not a great deal, and certainly not if you were to work out on a dollar value, like a per hour value of the practitioner's time and the researcher's time, the amount that they received was not enough to cover their wage. So that's another aspect of it, actually, is that research needs funding. So our organisations need to understand that the level of funding that is required is often a lot more than what organisations are willing to give. But so it was a merit-based application. So there were several applications that came in. There were only 3 projects that were going to be funded. And I don't know how many applications there were, but there were certainly a lot more than 3. So they were assessed on their viability, so how and their quality. So the mentorship happened really between the librarians and the academics. So the academics helped the librarians along in the proper way to do research and to conduct research, and based in the literature and previous reports and previous research and so on.
So how you assess how they did the collaboration? Do they have to make it in the documented progress, or?
Yes, in an informal way, and that was the reason for having the 9 virtual meetings with all of the research groups. It was to catch up I think it was about every 6 weeks, and they would just basically report in what they had done, what they had achieved, any problems that they had faced, and what was remaining, what was left to do on their research. And the final goal was for each research team to write an article and to have it published, and that happened as a result of the project. So that was really good.
Okay, and is that offline or online assessment?
The articles are available online. I'm not sure if they are behind a paywall though, but I can look into that, and I can maybe send you those articles.
Okay, thank you. Untuk sesi pertama, mungkin saya masih bisa buka lagi. Ada lagi yang mau bertanya?
There's a few things in the chat, Riza. Are they questions, Pak Riza?
Okay. Ada lagi yang mau bertanya? Mungkin dari Bapak Ibu rekan dosen. Any from the students? Oh, oke. Nurma Fitria, silakan.
Okay. Good morning, Miss Catherine. My name
Morning.
is Norma Fitria. I want to ask, what kind of approach that can be used in this digital analysis? Maybe we can approach what be used in this digital analysis.
So different tools to conduct digital analysis.
I think it's yes. Approach means the terms of tools.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Norma? You mean the
Maybe
tools or how the people did?
yes. Maybe we can to use what a method this digital analysis like this.
It's
So
probably reference to your position, Catherine.
Oh,
as
my position?
Analyst. Yeah. What kind of approach or method do you use?
Sorry, Risa, you were breaking up now.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's not stable. Okay, I'll repeat it. In your position as digital research analyst, how you approach if there's a problem occur, I think, or how is there any project you're working and how you approach the problems? I think.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of my work, even though I am here in Adelaide and I work for a university that is here in Adelaide, I do a lot of my work from home. So a lot of and actually even when I am on campus and at the university, I still often have Zoom meetings with my researchers. And that's mainly COVID, I think, more than anything. We still, even though COVID is reasonably under control here, there's still, if you don't have to meet face to face, we try to avoid it. So we do have a lot of meetings just over Zoom. How I approach any problems, I try to be as open as possible in my communication. I try not to use jargon because even though I may be here in Adelaide, as I said, we have a very multicultural society here. Many of my researchers do not have English as a first language. And whilst their English may be very, very good, there may still be things that I might say as a white Australian and from my own European background that may not be appropriate in their culture or in their language. So I try to use very correct English, very proper English. I try to be very open with my communication. And above all, I try to be honest with any advice that I'm giving them. I try to give them the full story as I know it, and leave any decisions up to them. So present them with the full story, present them with the options, and then they can make their decisions. Does that answer the question?
Gimana Bu Nurma? Apa ada lagi yang mau ditambahkan? Silakan. Apa itu
Okay,
yang
enough.
dimaksud?
Okay,
Yeah.
enough. Thank
Okay.
you, Miss
Thank you.
Catherine.
Ya. Oh ya, silakan Ibu Prihandari.
Terima kasih. Miss Catherine, I want to ask about, is there any alternative for data collecting for, you mentioned earlier that digital data is only can retrieve until 2 years before date. Is there any a strategy in digital research if we want to research more longer period of time, maybe 10 or 20 years before? Is there any chance to do that kind of research? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, great question. Really good question. Yes, we can. And the type of data that you collect will depend on how long it lasts for, basically. So that's when a whole new field of information comes in, and that's called digital curation and digital preservation. So I use the example of a Word document, for example. If you were to create a Word document now, but you tried to open it in, say, Word 97, it wouldn't work. But what you need to do is to create it now, then save it in the most immediate version prior, and the most immediate version prior. It's like you can't jump several different versions of Microsoft Word, for example. That's going to be the same with any digital file, whether it is a Microsoft Word document, whether it is a JPEG file, for example. You know, however many years ago, JPEGs didn't exist. MP4 didn't exist. So we need to make sure that what's created as an MP4 today, when a new file format comes out, that we migrate it to the new file format and we save it there. And then we save it again to the next file format and so on. So that hopefully in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, we can actually still access the material. It might not be the exact file that it was created in, but the content is still available in those newer file formats. So yes, that's a whole new that's a whole new field of study and a whole new field of research with digital preservation and curation. But great question, really good, and it is such an important thing that we do this as well, which is where certainly in terms of universities, where research data management comes in. Essentially, it is research data preservation.
Bagaimana Ibu Priandari?
Terima kasih. I would like to know if you have some reference or writings that I can refer to
on digital preservation.
Yes.
Yes, lots. Actually, I'm sure Pak Riza would have some too, but I can send them to you. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I will ask Catherine later. And
there's actually also a lot of.
Yeah, if you, I will.
Sorry, Riza, you've frozen. Oh, you're back again.
Yes. It's not very stable here. Yeah. Ibu Priandari, you can leave your email to us, and I will ask Catherine later, and we will send you the more material about the digital preservation. And
okay, thank you.
Catherine, if I may follow the question, that means for metadata also take an important role?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And in fact, in one of I used to teach digital curation. So you've got me onto another one of my topics. One of someone who was very, very influential and was very important in digital curation, digital preservation in Australia for a number of years. He is now retired, and that is Professor Ross Harvey. He was a mentor of mine when I was working in Melbourne. And he did a guest lecture for me for one of my digital preservation classes. And he was asked the question, what is more important, saving the content or saving if you could only save one of the two, what is more important, saving the content or saving the metadata? And his response was saving the metadata. And that surprised me because I thought without the metadata, you don't have the content. But if you just have the content, you have no context, you don't know when it was collected, you don't, let's just say it's an audio file, for example. You don't know who's speaking, you don't know necessarily what they're speaking about, you don't know when they were speaking, you don't know the format in which it was collected, which will then impact on, so for example, the Word document example again, if you didn't know that it was a .doc file, you're not going to know how to necessarily get previous versions, or you don't know what version you're able to upgrade it to. So it was really interesting that, you might lose all the content, but the metadata in terms of digital preservation is actually incredibly important, because if you don't know what file format it was saved in, you don't know what you're able to migrate it to. So, and there's all sorts of other considerations. But yes, that's absolutely vitally important that you not only save the content, but you save the metadata along with it. Yeah, great question.
You mentioned the professor asked you which one to save first. And what is the answer? The metadata.
He said the metadata, yes.
The data. So
yes.
You preserve the metadata first and then the contents follow?
Oh, no. If you are able to save both, you save both. And neither one is more important in that sense. But he was asked if you could only save one, would it be the content or would it be the metadata? And he said the metadata. Yeah. Which I guess for many of us would be counterintuitive, right? So, why would you save a book if the pages are blank? And that's kind of what it's saying. Let's not worry about the content, but let's save the metadata, because then at least with the metadata, you know that an interview took place, you know when it took place, you know how it took place. You might not have the content, but you still actually have a record of it happening. So, I mean, obviously both are very important, but it's if you had to just save one, his opinion was to save the metadata.
It's kind of an irony, because most of the media developer thought that we must first a lot of content. Most of that actually it doesn't.
Sorry, you froze again, Bakarisa.
So most of the technology developer, they talk about how we gather or collect the content first before the metadata. And what really needs is another is with metadata.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. And that's also partly what research data management is about. Part of research data management is not only the storage and the long-term storage, and therefore the long-term accessibility, but it's also about central to that is creating a data management plan. And the data management plan will have information like when it was collected, who collected it, how it was collected, where it was stored, and so on. So it has all of that information about it. So all of that metadata that is within the data management plan is kept separate and is kept along with the data itself.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of research collaboration, so the media is not very important at the end, or because it's always follow whatever the metadata is. Is that right?
No, I think the medium is important. Because it's different. How I'm talking to you now is different to what I would do if I was just writing to you, for example. So I think it is
in communication. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the richness of media. It's also take important role.
Yes. Yeah. We can't escape digital media now. You know, and it's been wonderful for connecting our world in lots of different ways, in professional ways like this, in social ways, by having you know, access to and being able to talk to people over long distances and different time zones. I've actually just signed up for a conference coming up, and it's taking, when I read it, I thought this is going to be ridiculous. It's taking place over something like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. But what it's doing, it's an international conference. In Australian time, they only have sessions in the morning and they only have sessions in the afternoon. So it allows people in America to present. It allows people in Europe to present. And it's a wonderful means, a wonderful rich means of communicating with people. We can't escape it. But the downside of that is that if we have anything that we want to keep, for example, I'm going back to the research data idea, there's a whole lot of problems associated with keeping that data. It looks like Priyandari still has a question.
Ibu Priyandari, masih ada pertanyaan?
Oh no, oh sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think
ya.
Sorry.
Yang lain?
Okay.
Ada lagi pertanyaan? Saya lanjut langsung. Dibagi sesinya, langsung saja kita berjalan. Kan mahasiswa mungkin? Oh, Pak Vito mana? Langsung online aja, kan masuk. Oke, ada yang mau bertanya lagi? Ada? Oke, we have more than 300 participants. That's quite...
Wow.
Vito. Okay, is there anyone else? Okay. Masuk, udah Pak Vitonya.
Hello, Miss Catherine.
Hello.
It's nice to see you.
You too.
Okay, Miss Catherine, I have one question for you. I want to. Let me introduce myself. My name is Vito Prasetya.
I'm the colleague of Pak Riza.
Yeah, I'm the colleague. I'm the one of colleague of Pak Riza. Okay, I'm from University of Lampung. I have one question for you. I want to ask how important the common tools in terms helping other researchers to conclude or making a decision for the research. Thank you.
The tools, did you say?
How important the communications tools
The communication tools.
for helping build decision making?
Oh, very. Yeah, I think these communication tools are, they allow us to still do our work and to communicate and to collaborate without having to, for example, leave our families. When I was working with this project as the research fellow, I was based in Adelaide, and both of the professors were based in Melbourne. So I didn't see them face to face. I actually saw them face to face once. I went to Melbourne to see them and to work with them for a week. But then I had to come home very quickly because Melbourne was being locked down because of COVID. So I did have plans to go back to Melbourne again a little bit later in the year, but because of COVID, we weren't able to. So I was still able to do my job, and this project was still able to continue. So that the larger part of the project, not so much just the radar part, because that happened before COVID. But yeah, we've been able to do our research and collaborate and write an entire paper without even being in the same city. So it's been wonderful. It's been really, really so absolutely vitally important. I cannot imagine doing the work that we did, say just using a telephone, for example. So very important to be able to see people and speak to people. This is as good as face-to-face as we're going to get. And I don't know about you, but when I'm on a Zoom meeting now, if people have to turn their videos off, for example, because their internet's unstable, I don't like that, because I like being able to see people and see their reactions. But so internet can be a bit of a problem in that sense. If it's not stable and you do have to turn videos off, it's not fantastic. But it's really opened up a whole new world and a whole new level of being able to collaborate with people. It's really amazing. So yeah, very, very important to answer your question.
And
excuse me, Riza.
for the radar program, is it open for yes? Siapa ya?
I'd like to, maybe it's not really a question. Yeah. Hello, good afternoon, Miss Catherine.
It's nearly afternoon here, yes.
Yeah, in Australia. Yeah. My name is Dani Sulistiarini. I'm one of the Pak Riza's colleagues here in University of Lampung. And I did my master in Australia many years ago. So I have an experience about how I experienced how a library and librarians were really, really important for my study. And I saw how technology has been a very important part of library operations every day. But we have a problem here in Indonesia because there are not many people who realize the importance of library and librarians in academic and research. So even we have vocational education. We have diploma for librarians here in UNILA. But I agree with your opinion that maybe we need to improve our curriculum. So we have to integrate technology more into the curriculum, so they realize the importance of research for librarians, research for library, so they can help researchers and study, academic activities for students and lecturers more than before, I think.
Yes.
So I think this is not really a question. I just would like to share my opinion, and maybe I'd like to know your opinion about it, because we
Yes.
have different situation in Indonesia and Australia. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I think many people here agree that libraries and librarians are important, but they still don't fund them. So our libraries are not they're well funded in comparison to many countries. We still are not as well funded as, for example, the Scandinavian countries. They have really embraced libraries and librarians, and that is something that is the foundation of their social. There's a bit of noise coming of their society. So yes, I think we have something to strive to meet what the Scandinavians are doing. I'm not sure if we will ever get there in very uncertain economic times at the moment. Australia did come out of the we're still in a pandemic, but we have been relatively okay financially with the recent COVID situation. Certainly a lot better than a lot of countries. We are still making cuts to essential services, and our government is still making cuts to essential services, and libraries are certainly no exception. Yes, I absolutely think that technology needs to be a very important part of library education. We still have a lot of people who come to library education because they love books.
Yeah.
And I love books too, but a large part of what we deal with, especially in an academic library, does not involve the physical book anymore. We have ebooks. All of our articles now are electronic. We do not have physical journal subscriptions anymore where the journal arrives by post. I personally have some or one that comes to me through a membership, but I actually have a large number of them sitting on my floor unopened at the moment because, who gets time to actually read anything that's not on your screen anymore? So absolutely, I think there is a big perception problem in librarianship. I think it's also partly because of the name, library, libris, book. I personally think of librarians as information professionals, and I think that archivists also are information professional, records managers are information professionals because they deal with information. It doesn't matter what form that information comes in. It might be a book, it might be an electronic book, but they deal with information. So I prefer to think of in those terms. And I think actually by still using the term librarian and librarianship, I think it's very narrow because the roles, the skills that librarians have and their aptitude for certain things goes far beyond just being able to serve in a library. Things like the research data management, helping researchers with finding the correct information, which falls under the information literacy. We have a large amount of disinformation and misinformation today as well. And we talk about digital natives, and many of the people in front of me here would consider themselves digital natives.
Yeah.
But can they tell disinformation and misinformation from accurate information? Many of them can't. And that's not a criticism of that generation. It's just that it's something that has never had to be taught before. There is this real sense that if it's on the internet, it's true. And that is absolutely not the case, you know, and we've seen that the world over, not just here in Australia and probably not just in your part of the world either, but in Europe, in the UK, in America. Look at everything that's happening politically there. Look at what's happening currently in the Ukraine and Russia. Look at what the Russian people understand is happening. It's not actually what is happening. And they will, of course, blame the West. And the West blames them, but we know that the information that the Russian people are getting is not accurate. But the Russian people, and I'm being very generalist here, I understand, but Russian people do not question what has come from their state-sanctioned media outlets, whereas people in the West do tend to question some more. So yeah, we do need studies in misinformation, in disinformation, in digital information, in digital literacy. And so, yes, I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Anything else, Bu Dani? Anything you'd
Yeah,
like to
Pak
add?
Riza, thank you. Yeah, I agree with all of your opinions.
Miss Dani was graduate from Monash University.
Oh, wonderful. That's a wonderful institution.
Many years ago, 2005.
Oh, that's not that long ago.
Yeah,
My
hopefully
own, a wonderful professor who was one of my PhD supervisors is now at Monash. She wasn't there in 2005, but Gillian Oliver, you would remember Dr. Gillian Oliver, Pak Riza?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yes.
Wait,
Yeah,
I thought she was in New Zealand. No,
No, she's at Monash. Okay. Yeah, so yeah.
Hopefully
She's actually
one day I
physically
can
in
be
New
back
Zealand
to
at the
Monash.
moment, but she works at Monash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh well, the RADA program itself, is it allowed for another international researcher from the outside of Australia, or just it's particularly only for Australian users?
It was well, actually no, it was I think no, it would have been only for Australian. It wasn't really limited in that sense. Like it wasn't a selection criteria or a limitation, but the people who received the grant were all Australians. Yes.
Oh, okay. So if I do a correlation with one of the affiliation in Australia, then my affiliation allowed to have opportunity from the RADA program. Is that?
It's not an ongoing program, so it was only just run the once, and it was within a larger program that was funded by the Australian Research Council. So it was a little bit, in a way, it was a little bit of a pilot project, and we are hoping that we will be able to run something similar again. Yeah, there are some funding opportunities, not necessarily aimed at librarians and librarianship, but there are some Australian government sponsorship, if you like, and funding every now and then for Australia, and mainly through the ASEAN, so the Australian and Southeast Asian network. So ASEAN sometimes puts funding up for joint research between Australia and Southeast Asian nations. So probably worth keeping an eye out for that. And actually one of your colleagues from the National Library, I'm trying to think of his name, is here currently doing his PhD. He's nearly finished. What's his name? Oh, Umam. I cannot remember his surname, I'm sorry, but Umam is from the National Library in Indonesia. And he's doing his PhD here at the University.
Who you supervise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you informed him to join us? No?
No, I forgot.
Today? Okay, maybe next time.
Yeah.
Oke. Apa ada penanya lain sebelum kita tutup? Kayaknya sudah. Farhan, silakan. Farhan. Siapa? Ada lagi? Ini kayaknya minimum dari mahasiswa ini. Padahal ada nilai tambahan untuk mahasiswa. Mungkin ada rekan-rekan mahasiswa yang mau bertanya? Apa saja? Bisa belajar di Australia atau bagaimana? Silakan. Oh ini dari Ihsan Nasrullah lewat chat ya, mengenai digital risk. There's one question, Catherine, from one of the student.
Yes.
He asked about what if is in the research is in the remote area, and that area doesn't really have a very good internet structure or something. There's like a digital divide from the major city. How did you do the data collection or something?
Yeah, so you saw the size of Australia on the map that I showed earlier.
It's a continent.
It's a very, very big country. Unfortunately, a lot of what's in the middle is uninhabitable anyway.
It's a desert.
But we do have a lot of communities here in regional and remote areas where internet connection is not, and certainly for anything like this, it's not possible. You might get mobile phone reception if you're lucky. In those cases, we have to resort to analog. We have to resort to going out to the people and talking to them. There is no other option, unfortunately, until our internet, and it's actually a lot better than what it has been. But yeah, it's still not great in a lot of regional areas. So, and I guess you also have a lot of regional, even though you're quite small comparatively, I guess you still have a lot of regional areas that don't have very good or very strong internet.
So they cannot do the data collection from their place, so they have to come to university.
Yeah, well, they certainly can't do it digitally. So it's either, and in those instances, it would probably be the researchers going out to those communities and collecting the data manually.
Manually.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a very good question, Ihsan. So yes, there's a lot of similarity with here in Indonesia, because still a lot of area don't have very good infrastructure.
Yes. Yep.
Ada lagi? Ini bagus, Ihsan pertanyaannya ya. Ini dapat 5 poin. Okay, there's one from Miss Niwayan Puspasuci. She wanna ask how you solve the problem when you're facing in your profession. So that I don't quite really sure.
So which problem in particular?
Can you elaborate, Ms. Niwayan? The problem, what kind of problem do you usually face in doing the management of radar?
I didn't manage radar. So the radar project and program happened before I started working on the project. So yeah, I can't really answer that one.
Oke, ada lagi yang lain? Jadi Miss Catherine, karena ini masih prototype dan ada beberapa hal yang nggak bisa dia buka ya, berkaitan dengan kinerja di dalam Australia sendiri. Ada lagi? Most of the participant is undergrad students, so they are in their bachelor degree, and probably some of them interesting to study in Australia. any tips you can share how to study in Australia?
Do it. Come and visit. I believe your government offers some
Yes.
tips. Yes, apply. And I'm not just saying that for Australia. If you can go to any country that you would like to go to, I think studying in another country is so important. And I think Pakariza can talk to you about this as well from his own experience. His experience will be different to mine, of course, even though we went to the same places. I went to Western countries. I live in a Western country, so it would have been quite different, but it still gave me a great opportunity to meet with other people, to see how things are done in another country. And even though they might be Western cultures, they were still very different cultures to mine. It also gives you an amazing professional network. I wouldn't be here today talking to you if Pakariza and I didn't study together. I constantly refer back to my other colleagues, my professors. I actually got a message just the other day, a photo of someone who used to work at a university here in Australia, a photo with Professor Nils Faro, Risa. And I saw the photo and I said, oh, he's my old professor. And the person who used to live in Australia didn't realise that I used to study with Professor Faro. So it gives you an amazing network. And I can say that I know someone on every continent in the world except Antarctica. How many people can say that? Pakariza can as well. And it's just amazing. And you learn so much. And I think you also not just professionally, but personally as well, it helps us to understand each other as humans, as different cultures. It helps us to become more tolerant. And I think that is just, such an important aspect for our world, is to learn and to respect each other and to understand each other. If you never come across anyone who is any different to you, you'll never understand. So yes, please do come to Australia. If you do, please look me up. I'm bound to be here somewhere. I might not be, well, I will be working at Intersect because I love Intersect.
Okay. Because another students want to ask, Miss Aulia Rahma, mana Miss Aulia Rahma tadi? Ya, ada dua ya, Aulia Rahma dan Fadia Rahma Dania. Mana Aulia Rahma tadi kayaknya yang duluan ya? Ada?
Okay, thank
Aulia
you,
Rahma.
Okay, hello, Miss Catherine. So I want to ask that, is there any tips from your experience for the time management for your schedule? Thank you, Miss.
No.
Okay, how you manage your work? How you manage your work? You work literally on 3 different jobs.
Four.
Oh my.
I am the
Okay, how do you
worst
manage?
time manager. And as I get older, I'm getting worse. No, it is a very, very good question. I think just to know what your deadlines are and work towards those and work towards them in order as well. And sometimes it's asking for forgiveness and saying, I'm sorry, but I dropped, we have a saying in English, I dropped the ball. So at the moment I am juggling. I'm juggling lots of balls and sometimes I'm going to drop one. But yeah, it's knowing, I think, mainly priorities, knowing what is the most important thing and getting that done. And a to-do list is always important too. Good question.
Okay, good
Thank
tips.
you, Dr. Catherine.
Thank you. And the second one is from the chat, Amanina Shahida. she asks, is it any method when you do the data collection beside the interview? Is there any method do you use beside the interview?
Yeah, so data collection can be done in all sorts of ways. So questionnaires, so you can send people an online questionnaire, for example. Yeah, interviews, focus groups. Each method has its good sides and its downsides.
All of them online? All of them in
most
online,
surveys,
or
yeah, most
you
surveys now are done
SurveyMonkey
online. Yep, most surveys or questionnaires we do online, and we use a tool called Qualtrics. Is one tool, but that's a very popular tool. I'll just pop that name in the chat. I think I've split no typo. There is also another product called REDCap. Whoops.
Is it an open source or?
No, unfortunately.
Is it open source or proprietary?
No. REDCap is a way of surveying for longitudinal studies. So a lot of people in health will often use REDCap because they'll talk or they'll collect data at the start of a project, and then maybe a year after the project's closed, and another year and another year and another year, so on. So that is often for longitudinal data. There are things like SurveyMonkey though, that is open source. It will give you, so a free version will give you a basic survey. If you pay then for a subscription, you can get a few more and features. But I think for my master's thesis, I used SurveyMonkey and it was fine.
Yes, you did.
So I think for the things that we would do, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can take it as the last questions from Ms. Fadia.
Okay, thank you so much, Fariza, for the opportunities. Hi, Miss Catherine. My name is Fadia, one of the undergraduate students of communication science. I'm sorry I cannot show my face through camera because I'm not in a good condition right now because of the vaccine effect. And my question is, how can we measure the research collaboration through media activities to know is this collaboration success or not, or what is the KPI for this collaboration? Thank you.
Good question.
That's a good one. How do you know?
Yeah, it is hard to know, I guess. And you know, how do you measure a good collaboration? I guess when you, yeah, good question. So I think you would probably if everyone in the collaboration at the end of the project feels happy and satisfied that they met the aims and the objectives of the study. And I guess a really fundamental question would be, ask yourself, would I work with those people again? And if the question's yes, then I think you can say that that's a successful collaboration. But just remember that you might answer yes and say, oh, yes, I'd worked with them before, and I would work with them again, but they might not want to work with you. So I think if everyone is willing to work together again, then I think you can say that that was a good and a successful collaboration. Good question.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Fadia, is that satisfied? Is there anything you want to add, Ms. Fadia?
I think that's enough because it already answered my question. Thank you so much, Miss Catherine.
My pleasure.
Okay. Well, time is closing by. So it's almost 2 hours. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, participants, students, and colleagues, we have all discussed about our guest speaker do and about the radar program in Australia. I hope we can have something to learn or something we can remember. I don't want to fix conclusion because conclusion if we can highlight what we were discussed this morning. The RED program is in Australia play an important role for bridging the novice researcher, the expert researcher, the student, the international student to do collaboration in the, and then we also learned today that the digital research by using communication tools doesn't mean always have to be together at the same time. However, the communication tools play an important role also to give more certainty, if I use the word correct, to give the certainty either for the governments, from the university, how they can have a very robust and solid foundation of data. And also it gives fostering more sophisticated research in the future. Anything you like to add, Catherine?
I think that's a good summary.
That's good. Thank you. We all thank you, Catherine, Dr. Catherine Howard, for to discuss with you. I hope we and then I also like to thank all the participants, the students, the colleagues who still following discussion for almost 2 hours. You can give yourself applause for that. And in the end, I will say greetings in Bahasa. Terima kasih atas perhatian Anda semua. Dari jurusan Ilmu Komunikasi FISIP Unila, kami menghaturkan terima kasih banyak-banyaknya atas partisipasi Anda. Dan kegiatan ini adalah satu dari berbagai macam kegiatan series of international lecture yang akan jurusan kami lakukan. Kami juga akan mengadakan Stadium General dengan Profesor Miriam Lim dari Kanada. Kami harapkan Anda juga dapat bergabung dengan kami di waktu tersebut. Selanjutnya akan ada pengumuman lebih lanjut dari jurusan kami maupun dari Instagram fakultas di FISIP Unila. Okay, thank you, Catherine, so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here. We will see you in the future. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you take a picture?
Okay. The host wants to, the host wants to take the picture of us. So some of you might open your camera so we can all have screenshot. Okay, the host. Pak Pito? Oh, okay, silakan.
3, 2, 1. Sekali lagi. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, thank you all. Terima kasih, Catherine.
Terima kasih, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Bu Wulan.
Sampai ketemu lagi.
Hi, Kak Riza.
Say hello to Scott.
Yes, I will.
Terima kasih. Saya selaku moderator undur diri dulu.
Udah ya, tutupnya. Thank you.